In May of 2009, I had just gone through a rough breakup with my girlfriend of almost 3 years. We had moved from Calgary to Toronto together, and even after things ended, we were stuck living in the same apartment. It was tense, it was uncomfortable, and I needed to get away. A buddy of mine from school, Chris, suggested we head out for a weekend camping and fishing trip. He grew up outside of Toronto in a place called Flamborough, full of forests, fields, and winding creeks. He told me the fishing was great, and I didn't need much convincing. We packed up our stuff and drove out to Grindstone Creek, near some wetlands. We set up camp in what was probably a farmer's field, technically trespassing, but tucked away by a forest edge where no one would notice. It felt like the perfect escape. That night, we fished until dark, roasted hot dogs and potatoes over the fire, and washed it all down with a few craft beers. It felt like the first time in months I could actually breathe. By midnight, we called it a night. We shared a tent, and Chris was out cold in minutes. I laid awake longer, scrolling through my phone, until about 1:30. At some point, I drifted off, but not for long. I woke up to this high-pitched yipping sound. At first, groggy and half asleep, my brain tried to make sense of it. Coyote, I thought. Just a coyote. The noise was sharp, repetitive, and constant, carrying through the trees. I lay there listening, but it didn't stop. It kept getting closer. 10 feet from the tent, maybe less. My chest tightened. Coyotes back home in Calgary never scared me. But what if this one was rabid? What if it smelled our food? Anxiety rushed in like it always did, making everything feel 10 times worse. I nudged Chris awake. He'd heard it too. We whispered about what to do, realizing we had nothing. No BB gun, no pepper spray, nothing to scare an animal off. Finally, Chris decided he'd unzip the tent, shine the flashlight, and yell. That should be enough. The zipper rasped open. Cold air seeped in. He pushed the flap aside and pointed the light into the darkness. Then his whole body stiffened. His leg buckled, and he stumbled backward into the tent, eyes wide like I'd never seen before. His voice shook when he whispered, "It's not a coyote. It's a guy. Some weird guy." The sound continued, that awful yipping and howling, now obviously not an animal. My stomach dropped. Normally, I would have thought Chris was messing with me. I scare easy, and he knew it. But one look at his face told me this wasn't a prank. He urged me to look for myself. My hands trembled, but I pulled the flap back just enough to peek. At first, I saw nothing. Then my eyes adjusted. A man stood only a few yards away. He swayed side to side under the beam of the flashlight. He wore a baseball cap and women's lingerie. The sight turned my blood cold. This wasn't just strange, it was wrong. The noises, the way he loomed so close to our tent in the middle of the night, his appearance, something about him screamed danger. I ducked back inside, heart racing, while Chris and I whispered frantically about what to do. Finally, he shouted out, "Hey, get out of here. We're trying to sleep." The noises stopped. The woods went dead silent. Then came the sound of footsteps, heavy, running straight toward our tent. We both yelled, voices cracking, "Get out of here. We'll call the police." The footsteps stopped just outside the thin nylon wall separating us. For several seconds, the only sound was rain dripping from the trees onto the tent. Then we heard him walk past, his footsteps crunching the grass, moving toward the road. We stayed silent and still until we could no longer hear him. Neither of us slept again. We lay frozen, listening for every twig snap and gust of wind, waiting for morning light. As soon as the sky began to pale, we tore down camp and bolted. On the drive home, we tried to laugh it off, two grown men terrified in their tent. But underneath the embarrassed jokes, neither of us could shake the question. What was that guy doing out there? Why was he dressed like that? Why those noises? Sometimes I wonder if things would have gone differently if it had been two women in that tent instead of us. Maybe he was just some strange, broken person. Maybe he was testing us. Or maybe it could have ended much, much worse. I don't know. And honestly, I'm glad I never found out. Back when I was in middle school, I had a small circle of very close friends. My best friends were Ava, Lily, Noah, and Sean. We weren't troublemakers, but we had adventurous streaks. We loved road trips, camping, late nights at the beach, The kind of stuff kids do when their parents are lenient and trust them a little too much. The summer before 8th grade, we decided to go camping. Along with us came Ava's older sister, Marissa, and Sean's older brother, Tyler. That made 7 of us in total. Ava, Sean, and I were 13. Noah and Lily were 14. And Marissa and Tyler were both 17. We picked a forest about 20 miles from Noah's house. It was secluded, quiet, and completely off the grid. No phone service, no electronics, nothing. Just woods, a lake nearby, and us. Setting up camp went smoothly. The girls took one tent, the boys another. After swimming in the lake and making dinner over the fire, we roasted marshmallows and told stories until the night settled in around us. It felt perfect, like one of those trips you'd always remember. Around midnight, Marissa came back from her tent looking annoyed. She asked who kept running their hand along the side of the girls' tent. We all froze for a second, then laughed nervously. Nobody had left the group. Tyler suggested it was probably just a tree branch brushing against the fabric. Marissa didn't seem convinced, but she let it go and went back to bed. Eventually, Ava, Lily, and I decided to turn in as well. We crawled into our tent. Ava closest to the back, Marissa near her, Lily in the middle, and me by the entrance. Within minutes, I was asleep, but something woke me. I blinked at my phone screen, 2:15 a.m. The tent was quiet except for the wind outside. Then I heard it, a tapping sound, soft but deliberate, like fingers drumming against the nylon. It wasn't steady. A few taps, then silence. A few more taps, followed by a low giggle. My blood went cold. The laugh wasn't high-pitched or playful. It was low, almost muffled, and it sounded male. I held my breath, straining to listen. The tapping went on for another minute before fading into silence. I convinced myself it was a trick of my imagination, or maybe one of the boys being stupid, and somehow managed to fall back asleep. The next morning, we split into 2 groups for a hike. Marissa, Ava, Lily, and I went off on the trail while the boys stayed behind to fish and cook. When we returned a couple of hours later, the boys were gone, but the campsite wasn't empty. Our tents had been slashed open. I froze, staring at the shredded fabric. The cuts were clean and small, like they'd been made with a knife. Lily grabbed my arm and whispered, "Who would do this?" Before I could answer, Marissa and Ava came running, wide-eyed and pale. We were still trying to process what happened when Tyler came storming up from the lake, furious. His car tires had been slashed. Panic spread fast. No phones. No way to leave. Whoever did this was still out there. Marissa's car was untouched, but it only had room for 3 people. She agreed to take Noah and Ava back to his house to call for help and then come back for the rest of us. That left me, Tyler, Sean, and Lily at the campsite. None of us wanted to sit there waiting, so we decided to hike toward the main road. Maybe it would shorten the distance for Marissa when she came back. The air felt heavy and wrong, like the woods were holding their breath. Every snap of a branch made me twitch. After about 30 minutes, Tyler suddenly spun around, eyes wide. "Run," he shouted. I turned just in time to see them, 3 tall figures in hooded sweatshirts barreling toward us. They wore dark ski masks, their faces completely hidden. 2 of them had knives glinting in their hands. They were massive, each easily over 6 feet tall, built heavy and broad. We bolted. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but fear pushed me forward. Branches whipped against my arms and face as I tore through the trees, Sean and Lily right behind me. The men gave chase, their footsteps thunderous on the forest floor. For a horrible minute, I was sure they would catch us. But then silence. They stopped. Whether they lost interest or decided we weren't worth the effort, I'll never know. We didn't slow down until we broke out onto the main road, gasping for breath, scanning the tree line in terror. Minutes later, Marissa pulled up. We piled in her car, shaking and crying. At the station, we told the police everything. They searched the area, but found nothing. No tracks, no tire marks, no signs that anyone had been there, aside from our slashed tents and Tyler's ruined tires. I don't know who those men were or what they wanted. All I know is that if Tyler hadn't been paying attention, they might have reached us before we even had the chance to run. I still wonder what would have happened if they had. I live in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains in northeast Georgia. It's a gorgeous area filled with miles of national forest, state parks, and some of the best camping spots you could imagine. But my hometown itself isn't so beautiful. It's small, poor, and stagnant. Unless you're a doctor, a lawyer, or one of the few people working at the local power company, the jobs here don't pay much more than fast food or retail. Honestly, if it weren't for my freelance work online, I probably would have had to leave years ago. To the east of town sits a massive national forest. I hike there often with my dog. It's quiet, isolated, and peaceful, but sometimes unnerving. There are no homes for miles, no phone service, and the trailheads are littered with shattered glass from car windows. A reminder that not everyone who comes out here is here for nature. You'll see broken down cars barreling down service roads that only a 4x4 should be on. The people driving them look rough, desperate, sometimes dangerous. Still, I love the forest. And a few years back, I agreed to go on a camping trip with two friends of mine, Jacob and Isaac. The plan started simple, a paintball match in the woods. Probably not legal, but we didn't care. After a full day of running around, shooting each other, and laughing until our ribs hurt, we decided to stay overnight. We thought we'd camp nearby and play again the next morning. The first spot we tried was already taken by what looked like a church group. Every site was full. With the sun dipping low and night creeping in, we drove deeper and deeper into the woods, looking for somewhere else to set up. Our phones had GPS, but no service, and the roads were rough, gravel and mud winding further away from civilization. Eventually, we came across a dirt mound blocking the road. A broken metal barrier lay discarded off to the side. It looked like the rangers had tried to close the road off, but someone in a truck had already plowed over it many times before. My Ford had high clearance, so I eased it over the mound and pressed on. After a few miles, we found a clearing by a small creek. There were tarps hanging in the trees, stretched over a makeshift plywood table nailed to a trunk. It felt strange, like someone had been there before us. Trash was scattered in the brush. Old bottles, wrappers, and, most unsettling of all, a green bottle of insecticide, the kind people sometimes misuse for meth labs. We were tired, though, too tired to overthink it. We set up our tent, built a fire, and cooked chili with a few rum and cokes to wash it down. Around 11 o'clock, while eating, I noticed a faint glow on the other side of a nearby hill. Not moonlight, this was steady, unnatural, like the glow of a fire or floodlight just out of sight. Jacob and I decided to check it out. Isaac stayed behind to tend the fire and make popcorn. With flashlights in hand, we started hiking toward the glow. As we got closer, we noticed the trees had strange markings. Their bark had been stripped clean in perfect rings around the trunks. It didn't look like axe work. It definitely wasn't natural. We joked about some kind of ghost beaver to cover our nerves. Then, as we climbed higher, Jacob tripped on a rock and shouted. Instantly, the glow went out. The hilltop went pitch black. Silence pressed in around us. We stared at each other, sobered in an instant, and turned back. Neither of us said a word on the walk down, except to whisper about how wrong it all felt. When the campsite finally came into view, I froze. Someone was walking around near our tent. From a distance, it looked like Isaac, but he was wearing a hooded jacket I hadn't seen before, and he was holding a paintball gun. He moved slowly, circling the fire, peering into the tent. Then he walked up the same road we had driven it on. Confused, we hurried the last stretch. Just as we reached camp, Isaac suddenly stumbled out of the tent, pale, clutching his stomach, and vomited by the fire. He slurred something about having too many drinks. We asked him why he had been walking around with a paintball gun. He looked baffled. "The paintball guns are locked in the truck," he said. And sure enough, when we checked, they were still locked up, untouched. That wasn't Isaac we had seen. Someone else had been in our camp, circling the fire, staring into our tent. The three of us didn't waste time debating. We packed everything in a frenzy, threw the tent down still full of gear, piled into the truck, and left. When we reached the dirt mound, though, my stomach dropped. The broken barrier that had been tossed aside earlier was back on its stand, upright, blocking the road again. None of us wanted to get out and touch it. I eased the truck forward, nudging the barrier until it toppled, and we rolled over it. For a few tense seconds, I was sure we'd puncture a tire. But we made it. Relief didn't last long. A glance in a mirror made my blood run cold. A vehicle was behind us. Its lights were off, but we could see the shape of it in the moonlight whenever the road straightened. It stayed back just far enough to avoid being clear, but close enough that we knew we were being followed. For 45 minutes, I drove as fast as I dared over those winding gravel roads. Every time we hit a straightaway, we caught a glimpse of it. Always there, always just behind us. Finally, blessed pavement appeared. We sped onto the main road, hearts pounding, and kept going until we were nearly back to town. Only then did the road behind us stay empty. Since that night, I've driven past that dirt road a few times. The barrier is always up now, fixed in place like it never moved. I will never drive down it again.